Hi guys, my name is Maria Mateo and welcome to The Law. Today we have two very special guests. First of all, we have Brianna. She's the new associate at our law firm, and we have a judge today who honors us with his presence. It's just Judge Nestor Diaz. Welcome, Judge Nestor, and welcome, Brianna.
Thank you. Welcome, you too.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, Maria, and I'd like to say hello to all the viewers. Thank you for having me on this show. I'm one of your big fans, along with, I'm sure, Brianna. She told me off the record.
That's why I'm here.
Well, we are actually honored to have you here because not only do you have a great pedigree, but you are actually the first American Dominican to become a judge in Queens. And this is actually a great accomplishment. We're so honored and so blessed to have someone represent the Dominican community and the Dominican diaspora as you have done in the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. And for our viewers, how was your beginning?
Okay, well, thank you for that. And how far back do you want me to go?
Well, how did you end up in the United States? Were you born here?
Okay. All right. So I'm just like similar stories to other people. My parents came from the Dominican Republic. I'm a first-generation Dominican American. My parents, Nestor Diaz Sr. and Milagros Diaz Perez, came from the Dominican Republic during the era of Trujillo. As you know, Trujillo, I don't know if you covered this on prior segments, Trujillo was a dictator for a long time in the Dominican Republic. And my parents left there to give their children the opportunities and the liberties and the freedoms that were lacking in our native country.
Okay. And which year was that?
Okay, they had to be late 50s, early 60s. My father came first, and my mother followed thereafter.
And it takes a lot of courage to do that, to separate your family, leave your wife and your children behind, and then come by yourself and reunite in the United States.
Right, they were newly married, and they had left their firstborn son, Julian Diaz, who later became he was the patriot in the family. He was in the Air Force, United States Air Force here, and a police officer, and was one of the heroes of 9/11. But maybe you'll have him on another show. That's a teaser for the future. But then I'm one of three, so I'm the middle one, and then I have a younger sister, just by a year. So they came here, and we moved to Washington Heights. That's where I was born, Columbia Presbyterian. So I always thought it was called. My father used to say medical center. You were born in, so I was born there, and. So they worked very hard. My father had all sorts of jobs. He worked in Howard Johnson's in what later became Rockefeller Center, okay? And then he eventually had a bodega in Dyckman, Upper Manhattan.
Very, very common.
Right. So it was called, I remember it was called Un Rincón Dominicano.
Un colmado.
All right. And then there, my brother was working there. And whenever I called in sick from my school, St. Rose of Lima over there, then my father said, "Oh, you're sick, so you can help work in the bodega." So I never got a break. So I had a very limited sick days, So he always made sure I was helping him and his brother. So interesting thing is, like my brother reminded me about this, is that we will work there as much as possible, but we would never get paid. He says, "I'm your father. I'll give you everything you need. You don't need to get paid. So, but tú tienes que trabajar para la familia." So that was it. So work growing up, and then eventually. He sold the bodega and we moved to Queens. Jackson Heights, specifically Jackson Heights, to be closer to our families, and Jackson Heights, Corona. We had a lot of families here in the Queens, okay? Moved close to the Perez, Ramirez, Sanchez, all sorts of Ferreiras, all sorts of families that they were close to. So eventually, I always had a desire to work in public service because I knew the difficulties that the families, the immigrant families had. And I don't know, maybe you came across this. I was always the one that translated documents. So I guess it developed into that because I was already helping, translating and representing. Right. So eventually,
and working for free.
Yeah. So continue. I never got any. So I wanted. Am I going to get paid eventually? Right. But you were happy to do this. Everyone did their part, and eventually. they were saying something like, I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, okay? And they were always saying, you can do it, it's America, you can do it whatever you want. So I said, okay, you can do whatever you want. Then my brother and I one day said, let's go to 26 Federal Plaza. We applied for a job in the FBI.
Oh,
Okay.
wow, nice.
And they made me take a test, which I thought I failed. So one of many series of tests, like the bar exam later on, and happened to pass it. So they called me. So I eventually became an investigative support information clerk. It's a fancy way of saying you help them. So I started in the mailroom, okay, in the FBI, because the special agents,
Right.
someone has to do everything else. And they went into reception.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, the reception, and they eventually went up to reception. So I kept moving up in the organization, and being eventually a receptionist in the FBI, you get a lot of people that some consider emotionally disturbed. So they said, So I remember that we had a bulletproof glass and armor plating underneath, and then sometimes I remember there was somebody came by. He said it was King David reborn, and then we had a unit that would interview these people. I remember they had all sorts of stories. So that's a story for another segment, I guess. My FBI stories. So eventually I graduated from, and I did an internship because I wanted to get as much exposure to law. I said, let me try to do as
So
much
at
as I
that
can.
point, you already know you like law when
Yeah,
you were
so I
going
said,
to John
let me
Jay.
try to see if this is really what I want to do. So I did that. And then I got an internship with the Attorney General's office, the Bureau of Consumer Frauds and Protection. They had an office in Harlem, the Adam Clayton Powell Jr. building.
Okay.
Yes. So then, and there I was Bureau of Consumer Frauds and Protection, helping the attorneys give guidance and educating the public on the consumer laws, lemon laws. What happens if you get a card that's not as advertised and breaks down, so things like that. So it was another experience, making subpoenas, all sorts of things like that. From there, I got accepted to St. John's Law School. I live in Queens.
So based out of all of these experiences, then you said, I want to go to law school.
I want to go to law school. So St. John's, obviously the only attorney in the family, the first one, the aspiration of my father.
Did you like to argue? People say that attorneys love to argue.
That's it.
That's
You know
what
That's
they
what I've been told that my whole life.
It's interesting because I never thought of myself as the argue person because I was more like the peacemaker. Because as the middle child, I remember my brother and my sister had like very hard personalities, and I wound up always being the peacemaker. So I was thinking of myself always as be diplomatic and trying to make peace.
That's probably one of the hardest jobs of being an attorney, to be a mediator, and then to.
So that's what I thought of myself as, never as a person that argued, because I was trying to find the peaceful solution.
Right.
Can we get along? Then, interestingly enough, and then again, all the other I started in 19. I got into law school in 86, was it? You probably have the thing right there. And 86, so there weren't too many Hispanics in the law school.
Right.
So, and there were very few minorities. Okay, this is before your time. Maria's a lot more younger than I am. So all the minority law students got together, formed a law association. So it was BALSA, the Black, Asian, Latino Law Students Association, because we had to form something to have a voice. So Maria and I are members of an organization, the Latino Lawyers Association of Queens County, and we, in unity, there's strength. So when you're organized, you get yourself heard more. Sometimes the people say you're stronger than the sum of your parts. So back then, that's what maybe the origin. In law school, I'll tell you about this. In my first summer, between first year and second year law school's 3 years, for those who don't know, I got involved. I got hired as a summer associate in the special prosecutor's office. I don't want to monopolize this whole conversation. This is what happens when you ask an attorney a question. He goes, okay, I'll try to be brief in this. I worked in I got a job as a summer associate in the special prosecutor's office. They don't have it anymore, but back then it was Charles Hines. He eventually became the Brooklyn DA. Okay? And he offered a job because they didn't have as many minorities, and they said, I want to work to diversify the office. So I very happily took the job. And at that time, in the late 80s, I know I'm dating myself, late 80s, that there was a famous case called the Howard Beach case. I don't know if you remember it. So I was on the research team. So this is my baptism of fire, a case with nationwide, even international attention. To make a long story short, it was about 3 African Americans whose car broke down in the quote unquote wrong neighborhood. All right, Howard Beach. And then these people, they were trying to find a way or an auto repair shop, but it was, I think, a heavy Italian neighborhood. And when they saw these people maybe invading their neighborhood, which is ridiculous, a mob chased them. Okay, these 3 people. One person they beat within an inch of his life, what I recall. Another person got away. The third person, he got to the highway. I'm trying to remember what highway it was, but Brianna used to prosecute cases around here, so she probably knows more than I do.
I remember this story, but I don't remember details.
Right. So then the person came to the highway, and there was a break in the fence, holding the fence, but then before crossing the highway, it's like, what am I going to do? And he turned around, and he sees this mob chasing down us. For all you know, they killed the other guy.
Wow.
So he said, I had no choice. Let me try to cross the highway and get away from them. What happens when he crossed the highway? He got hit by a car and was killed. And the challenge was to show homicide, murder, by this crew, because it says we didn't put him to we didn't kill him. It said, but the theory was that they drove him to his death, the mob, and we got a conviction. So we had to show, it was a lot of pressure because we had to show the system works. Someone commits a crime, and then you imagine a lot of civil rights people were there. I remember Al Sharpton was there, and other people were there. So that was my introduction first as a summer associate.
That was a very good introduction.
Yes.
A very, very, very interesting case that probably marked you as
So there you go.
as an attorney.
Did you realize from that you were going to have to be some kind of liaison between people that don't believe in the system and somebody who does?
Well,
That's how I see myself.
Yeah, because a lot of people, it's easy to say the system doesn't work, this and the other thing.
Because it often disappoints.
Right. So it's incumbent upon us to try to work as hard as we can, listen to them, speak to them, and explain the system, and openly try to get a conviction, in which we did. I think only one person wasn't convicted, but the majority were. So we did well.
Well, speaking on that topic, is that something that you've, in terms of the system and things being treated differently, do you feel like you had to work harder to get to where you are because of the system?
Sure, because as you know, we're minorities. Okay. Again, I just look why I tell people, but I'm Dominican American. I consider myself an American. I'm proud of being American, but I appreciate my culture and where we came from. Okay, I consider myself Dominicano, and people realize that sometimes when I dance merengue or salsa, the Dominican comes out. But no, but that's part of my identity. So I consider myself Dominican American. So, and that's why I'm proud and try to represent wherever I go.
But do you feel like you had to work harder?
Yes, and that's getting to that question. We had to prove because again, even in law school, everybody seemed to have a father or
somebody that
an
knows something.
uncle that was a judge, a lawyer. I had nobody. To make for example, what's interesting, and then that inspired me to work even harder. Okay, and I accepted the challenge. I used it to drive me. So you have to go deep inside, like you, Maria. You had to compete with a lot of people in a hard program, and you had to learn because I know you went to the ABC school or something like that, American.
Yes,
and
we
nothing.
We both did.
All right, because my nephew is going there too in Dominican Republic, and it's good, but it doesn't compare to the level the curriculum that's here. I mean, you could talk more about that yourself. Right.
No, it's day and night. The difference is day and night, and unfortunately, the educational system in the Dominican Republic is very low in comparison to when you come here to the United States, and the system that we have. When I came here was a shock. The amount of work, not only because of the language, but the amount of work that you have to put in to pass a class, to pass a subject. So it's very, very different. But you did. You went to St. John's.
But I just see. I had the advantage of being born here, but you.
It's a different thing. We're
Yes,
just focused on you right now.
I remember you had your dictionary and then you work, but that's a different story.
Yes,
but
yes,
I know
yes.
you're, I appreciate it and admire what you went through. So then, yes, so I had to work harder, and then when one of the things that really sets the standard, and sets us apart, is passing the bar. Okay, at that point, I had to pass the bar, so I took like 3 bar prep courses because I overdo it, because if I fail, I don't want to beat myself up later on. I didn't do everything I could. And then I was getting married, so I said, I don't want to be thinking about this on my honeymoon.
Yes.
Okay? So I remember it was at Jacob Javits Center, okay, which was huge. There was, right. And then I remember that John F. Kennedy Jr. was also taking it at the same time. So
I think he took it 4 times.
Right, exactly. That's the point. So you get into the end of the
With the St. John's alum.
So this person, who's the son of the president, had every advantage. I'm the son of an immigrant, had all the disadvantages, and I couldn't afford to fail. And at the end of the day, I passed it the first time. And he went, like I think Brienne pointed out, he went out to fail 3 or 4 times. I mean, I guess he got the prestigious job at the Manhattan DA's office. He didn't take me there because they only took Ivy League people and everything. Ironically, now I'm the boss with it. Now they all have to listen to me.
Yes, yes.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. My first job out of law school was working as a long time, a special assistant to the Corporation Counsel for the Commercial Services, working in Manhattan Family Court. So I keep going back to downtown Manhattan where a lot of the courts are. There I basically worked to prosecute child support cases against non-custodial parents. So you had a lot of these single mothers that the father would abandon them by and large, and then they had to try to support the child, and often they had to go on public assistance because it was difficult for them to get a job and to support the child. So by collecting public assistance, they assigned to the city of New York their rights for child support. So then what we did is then we would sue the non-custodial parents in their place, because that gave us the assignment. And so the plan was to bring in the sue the non-custodial parent and get some child support so she could get out of the system and escape the poverty cycle. That was the plan. It didn't always work, but we did, and she got those free legal services. It was something to promote the rights of families, single mothers, and children. So that was so I would do a lot of that in my first career. So I did from 89 to 96. Okay, I'm dating myself again, but.
So then you went to the district attorney's office.
Yes. Then Hines said, "Why don't you get a real job?" I don't want to cast aspersions on the job I did in family court, but he said, he says, "Come work with me." So, other people had to go through a long line of interviews, and I got it in like a week. I said, okay. So, and before I knew, I was in the Brooklyn DA's office. I think Brianna could tell you about how difficult it is to go work in the DA's office.
It is. And because of it, do you think that I think you were also a defense attorney, right? And you were a prosecutor, and you were in family, and you were in this, and do you think that makes you a better rounded judge than the average judge?
I would say so. That's a good question. And I would expect anything.
I think it made me a better rounded ADA to have both experiences.
Yes, that's you're absolutely right. That's my opinions too. I think having experience from both sides of the people that go before you gives me a unique perspective. I aspire to be fair and equal with everybody who goes before us.
Whether it's your brother or your sister.
Yes, my brother was a police officer, so it was just in the family. I remember something that from, this may come familiar to you, Juan Pablo Duarte, okay?
Padre de la patria.
Sí, el padre de nuestro país. He has saying, ser justo es ser feliz. And that's what I aspire to be. Aspirar a ser justo. Aspire to be just, to bring felicidades, para el pueblo. So that's the Dominican part of me. Okay.
Yes. So is that what drove you to be a judge?
That's part of it, because it's interesting now that I reflect back, all these experiences, everything going, And eventually, when I got here, it seemed like I was preparing to be a judge without realizing it. All these different experiences, all these opportunities. So, and let me just say, in the DA's office, if I may, I worked in domestic violence because, domestic violence is something that happens, doesn't matter what race, creed, ethnicity, it happens to everybody, no matter how rich or poor. There's something that happens across everybody. And as someone bilingual, my skills aren't as strong as yours, Maria, but ellos me entienden más o menos. So then they will have me talk to a lot of domestic violence victims. Brooklyn is the largest borough, largest county in the New York State, and Queens is the second. Okay, so you can imagine. So we had a lot of victims. So they had me there. So I also eventually got involved in rackets, involved in civil rights, and other things like that. So that's bulk of my time. And then I went into private practice, okay. And I said, in private practice, I'm bilingual, and I said, let me do criminal and family law, but I have to know something about the immigration, because if we're going to represent the Hispanic population, I know I'm going to get I have to know something about immigration. So then I learned about that too. And so then, one thing led to dealt with another, because, a lot of my clients, they were arrested, and I would resolve the case, but sometimes immigration will pick them up. So it was like a continuation. So that's, eventually I wound up doing a lot of those cases.
So how did you becoming a judge happen? Did you just one day say, you know what, I want to be a judge? You were doing so well in private practice, and then one day you said, I want to be a judge, or somebody told you could be a great judge? How did that happen?
Again, I always want to be involved. Always want to be involved. So when I left the DA's office, this was about 2000, end of 2000 to 2001, right before 9/11. Then I started working at private practice, okay? And then one thing led to another. Even as a DA, we would get involved. We would go talk to children in school, to talk to them about there's other things that you could do. Working hard, you could be an ADA like me and things like that. So we used to do a lot of that. And then I continued doing some of that outreach when I was in private practice. I would go talk to churches, church groups, and help them prepare for the naturalization exam, okay, for citizenship. That would require they have to know the basics of civil and government. So I always like history, so I would help them there, help with registration to vote. So I got active in the community. So even as a attorney, I did that, but then I got active in the community where I want working with church groups. I mentioned that my brother was a police officer, so he got me involved with the New York Dominican Officers Organization. NIDO, right, Fraternal Police. So I became the general counsel. So after la policía, si no se mete en problema, they don't get in trouble, at least they have family members. So I got involved with that. So doing, sometimes we do food drives to raise, or raise funds to send school supplies to the DR, the poor area. So I did a lot of that. So, I got involved with other things because, again, I'm an attorney. Not many of us are attorneys. So,
but that's a big change. You're an attorney. You're defending people. You have your big practice, and you're helping by being an attorney. But to wake up one day and say, you know what, I want to be a judge. That's a lot of responsibility in your hands to have the fate of somebody else in your hands.
A lot of scrutiny.
How did that change?
Well, okay, I first got exposed to politics soon after I left the DA's office. They do a census every 10 years.
Yes.
So they did a census in 2000, and the census had indicated that area of Jackson Heights, Corona, East Elmhurst, there was a high concentration of Latinos. Okay, 66, but they were disenfranchised. They didn't have any elected officials, so they formed a district for that. So somebody said, Nestor would be perfect for that. With all your background, why don't you represent us? I said, oh, no. I thought I want to get into private practice. So, but to make a long story short, after a lot of soul searching, praying, and then eventually I decided to run for office. Okay? A New York State Senate, District 13. It was a brand new district. So, I didn't know anything about politics, really. But I had a lot of people. I made a lot of friends and connections when I was a DA and you work with city council and things of that nature. So I had a lot of support. To make a long story short, I lost that race, but I ran a clean race and on the issues, right? And I came in second place. The only person that beat me was someone that had been a city councilman, but he was term limited out and he wanted to keep a job. So he wound up winning. But I had apparently done such a good job that I got the attention of other elected officials, and I started working with them. And actually, I was working at city council, New York State Senate, as a running the local legal workshop. So then I was got to do that on the side, part time. So again, this is me getting involved. I said, okay, I'll help people, and then if they want to hire me afterwards, then they could do that. So that's another avenue, because you as an attorney, you're always thinking about business.
Yes.
But
You
helping
have
the
to network to get the clients.
So
in.
eventually, I got active, doing all this other work, and after now, years later, in 2020, it just seemed that my kids had grown. They were out of the house. They were in school or married and everything. I says, okay, I think it's time to go for the judgeship. So. And then what happened is that all the context of community that I developed over the years, working with different communities, it just seemed natural that people wanted me to get involved. So then they trusted me. So as a result, it's just not, you don't just get up one day. It's just a natural progression.
So you were elected or you were appointed?
I was elected.
Elected. So now you were elected to civil court, and then you end up in criminal court. So what do you do in criminal court?
Well, yeah, this is a question you asked me off the record before.
Yes.
You said, Nestor, we elected you, and I supported you, and thank you for your support, because I helped you get, Maria helped me at least get 1,000 votes. I wound up getting close to 500,000 votes in Queens, which I'm proud of.
You got a lot of votes in Queens, because everybody wanted you here in Queens. So,
yes,
so what happened? You were
we
elected,
didn't have,
and then...
we don't, as you know, you go to court here a lot, and Brianna, you don't see too many Latino judges, at least before, except for one, recently, Diego Ferri. He used to be an intern of mine, too. So, and he's a very good criminal court judge. What happens is, this is the first time I become a judge, so I found this out. I was elected as a civil court judge in Queens. But what happens is, once you become a judge, you fall under the jurisdiction of the Office of Court Administration, OCA, and they assign you where they deem fit. So, although I was elected as a civil court judge, they decided to assign me to Manhattan Criminal Court. Now, you got to remember, this is in 2000 during the whole COVID thing, and all the courts were backlogged. And evidently, I guess if there's any logic, they wanted to send me Manhattan. And apparently my learning curve was a lot shorter than the other judges that came from civil court. And it so happens the supervising judge I had, he was a DA with me in Brooklyn. So he said, Nestor, I know you could handle domestic violence, so he just threw me in the domestic violence part. Now, Brianna will probably know is that domestic violence, especially during COVID, a lot of people are stuck in the same house. And everybody
sent back to the same house. That's why we're stuck with them.
And a lot of people can't handle pressure to us, so then they sometimes resort to violence or destroying property. And the number of arrests, domestic violence related, rose up. Let me give you an example. If there were 10 arrests, about 6 of them were domestic violence. So you can imagine the calendar in the domestic violence part went up.
But there's also a big domestic violence calendar here in Queens. Do you think there is any chance that we can have you back in Queens?
It is
I'm
the
hoping.
most diverse borough in the world.
I want to, Queens, as like Brianna says here, Queens is the most diverse county
In the entire.
if not, certainly the United States, if not the world. I think over 1,300 languages that are spoken here.
Well, we have a lot of Latinos, so we could use some more Latino judges here to represent
hopefully
us.
the right people get the message here, and I respect and appreciate everything everybody did it in Manhattan. I have one of the best supervisors I've ever had, Kevin McGrath, a great supervisor. But I'd like to come back to the place that elected me, and the people that want me. So I hope to come back here sooner than later.
We would hope that too as well. So we only have a couple more minutes, but I want to get into a few more questions that are very trendy right now. And I know that as a criminal court judge, you are in charge of bails, and this is a topic that it's very right now hot. And what is bail? It's something that a lot of people are talking. There is bail reform. What do you do? How is a bail determined right now at this moment?
Okay, so I just came from arraignments today. So again, Marie's always has a finger on the pulse. Okay, arraignment, when the person gets arrested, and Brianna can answer this, she used to be there too. When a person gets arrested, three things can happen. Obviously, the district attorney, the police make the arrest by and large. Then the district attorney, who they're on the behalf of the people of the state of New York, they represent, someone allegedly violated the law, and they represent the people of the state of New York. So sometimes when I'm in court, I refer to them as the people. Okay? So, or if Brianna was there before me, I would say Miss Vargas. Okay? I want to call Brianna on the record. Okay? So they're there. And the district attorney decides how they're going to prosecute the case. Because the police department, we have very highly trained police officers, but they think that the persons could be charged a certain way. But the DA makes a final decision, and they take other things into consideration. How strong is this case? Is it worth prosecuting as a felony? Perhaps it's better as a misdemeanor. One quick difference between misdemeanor and felony, I don't know if you touched this on prior shows. A misdemeanor, a crime, is the maximum it goes from 0 to 1 year maximum jail. And a felony is from a year and a day and onwards. That's your murders, robberies, serious crimes. And the misdemeanors, it could be your shoplifting cases, people fist fights in the street, a regular assault. Okay, so as a criminal court judge, I could hear both felonies and misdemeanors.
So out of those felonies and misdemeanor, who gets bail and who goes out free without no bail?
Well, as again, Brianna could tell you, is that in 2019 they passed bail reform laws. Okay, they drastically changed the way bail is set. Now we can no longer set bail on the basis of public safety. Okay, and the hands of a judge are tied. We lost a lot of discretion, so we cannot set bail on the majority of misdemeanor cases. Only a few of them, like strangulation, they call obstruction of breathing. Okay, a fancy way to say strangling. And you see a lot of strangulation. Apparently that's the in thing. Okay, and then or sex offense cases like forcible touching. If someone touches another person in a private area,
So that person will get a bail set.
They're eligible for bail.
Not always.
Okay, eligible for bail. So let me say, the DA, if they deem it appropriate, they could ask for bail. Then ask the judge to make the decision. So this attorney says, Judge, they present the case. Judge, we asked this person, he's eligible for bail, and based on everything else, we want you to set bail. But there's a lot of factors that play into it. One factor is, like I was saying, we cannot set bail based on public safety, only a risk of flight. Okay? So I have to decide, basically, there's a criminal procedure law 51030. Okay? And I've determined, if I determine after analyzing everything, considering all sorts of factors, I'll tell you about that in a minute, they'd have to see this person's risk of flight, determine the risk of flight. Then the second part of the test is I have to set the least restrictive means. What's the least restrictive means to make sure he or she comes back to court? So I factor in the seriousness of the case, the strength of the case. Because if something's a strong case, people may be less likely to come back to court. Okay? Murder is probably too easy to say. I'm not going to, I killed some murder. They saw me on camera. I'm not going to come back to court. Okay? And okay, but I factor in that, and that's the DA's argument. All things, his criminal history, criminal history, this is like a rap sheet. When they arrest a person, the police fingerprint, and the fingerprints get sent to Albany, the central location, and they give you a history that you consider. So when I'm looking at the person, these are the charges. I look at, has he been arrested before? How many convictions has he or she had? Have they failed to come back to court? Have they issued arrest warrants? So if I have a person that has 20 times that they've failed to come back to court, It may be high risk I may find that high risk of return, right? He's a high risk to return, especially if it's a strong case. As opposed to someone that's never been in the system and he's never had a criminal record. I may consider him less likely to set bail. So I consider all those factors. Okay.
What are the feelings? I can tell you, but this is not
Go ahead,
about
go
me.
ahead.
The feelings about the bail reform, meaning in short that you have to pretty much seriously hurt somebody, and that's not a lay term. It's a legal definition. It's not just stabbing. It's almost killing for them to stay in jail. That's something that here people have a very hard time with. It's hard for somebody to get almost killed by their boyfriend and they get sent back to the same house together. How do they feel in Manhattan?
Well, again, comment too much as a judge. All I can say is that I take a lot of things into consideration. If I find a case is bail worthy, they call it securing order, and it's all about, will the person come back to court? The choice. There's three things that could happen. Four things. Remand. Remand is the person could bring $1 million and he's not going to come out. We reserve that for very serious cases, like for example, homicide. Someone gets killed. Okay. By and large.
So your answer is that you can't answer my question.
Right, basically.
Okay.
But let me just explain to the audience. You could set monetary bail, okay, or supervised release, where an organization monitors a person, makes sure that they come back, or release on recognizance, otherwise known as ROR. So, and you try to be as fair and just as possible with these cases. So, obviously, I'm a big proponent of judicial discretion. I've been an attorney for 30 years, so I think I have a lot of.
But you don't get a lot of discretion now.
Because of the bail reform laws.
Yes,
certainly with a lot
your
of
hands
misdemeanor
are
cases.
tied. Yeah, it's very
and even
difficult.
some felonies that are non-violent. Well, look at this. But then after the bail reform laws, then they amended it like 2 or 3 times because they said this is outrageous. For example, and this is my last example, burglary, for instance. When burglary is basically criminal trespass. You go into property and commit a crime. It's not always stealing property. You could go into a house and assault somebody. That's a burglary. Okay? So, with the initial bail law, all burglaries were not eligible for bail. So then some people said, what? That's crazy. So someone will break into my house and you can't set bail? So they changed that. So if it's a residential property, a dwelling, see? Then it's bail eligible, but a commercial property is not. Okay? So those are some things. So the law is still in flux.
Mm-hmm. I don't mean to cut you off, but we are short on time.
Okay.
On our last note, less controversial note, what advice, if any, do you have for young attorneys who one day would want to serve on the bench?
Get involved. Like Maria Mateo and I were part of a great organization, Latino Lawyers Association of Queens County. Yeah. Okay, and that's the only bar association of Latinos in Queens County. Mm-hmm. Okay, get involved there, meet people, and get active in the community. Okay, we've done a lot. We've come a long way from 1997. Well, there's 30 people in the room, and the last dinner we had over 300. And we had judges, lawyers, elected officials. So we come a long way. The organizations like the Queens Democratic Party, they see that the public is behind you and very organized. They want it. So at the end of the day, they want votes. Mm-hmm. So if you represent that, you could get people who are supportive. That goes a long way. So get active in your community, like I did, and like I said, it was unconsciously prepared me for this role without realizing it. Okay?
You're meant to be.
Meant to be. Well, I do. We are out of time, like Brianna said, but I do want to thank, first of all, Brianna for being here, and honestly, your honor, your public service, it's something that has been undeniable since before you became an attorney, since even before you went to law school. So we're very proud of having Dominican American serving on the bench like you've done. And we are very, very happy to have you here today and explain to our public all of this knowledge that you have accumulated over the time. So thank you very much for coming today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I enjoy it, and always again, happy to be of service. Again, it's natural to us. Like Maria doesn't have to do this. She has to do things, but she's here to make sure you get information that you may not get from other sources. So thank you for this opportunity, all the work that you do. And Brianna, thank you for your service, Maria. Okay, Maria could have gotten other high-paying jobs, but she worked on behalf of the public to make sure that the laws were represented properly. So thank you again for your service.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for watching The Law. This was our episode for the month. And you can follow us in our social media in YouTube, Maria Mateo Law, LAW, in Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next one.